Welcome back to Construction Grammar. Today we will continue our exploration of morphology from a constructionist perspective. Throughout the course we said that constructions are form meaning pairings and that all levels of description involve these constructions. The knowledge of our language, therefore, is the network of all constructions known as the constructicon. In the previous video, we looked at constructional morphology, looking at productive and frequent word formation processes such as derivation, compounding, and conversion. Today, we will look at how construction grammar tackles non-morphological word formation processes such as blending, clipping, backformation, alphabetism, and acronyms. And as we will see, what we've learned so far will also help us explain these phenomena, which in traditional morphology are treated as completely separate phenomena, simply because they don't involve what is known as morphemes. Let's start with blendings. Blendings is when two words are combined into a single one, so smoke and fog become smog, a fairly well-known example. The remaining parts of smoke and fog that we add, so sm and og, are obviously not morphemes. They are elements of syllables. So I think a quick excursion is necessary. Let's look at the structure of syllables very quickly. Syllables have an onset and a rhyme. So smoke, for example, rhymes with cloak, and we can see that both smoke and cloak share the rhyme, i.e. the vowel and the final consonant, the nucleus and the coda as it is known, and only have different consonants preceding the vowel, so different onsets. So the syllable structure is onset, those are all the consonants before the vowel of a syllable. The nucleus, which is the vowel carrying the syllable, in this case O, and then the coda, which is all consonants following the vowel of a single syllable, as in smoke. So sm, onset, O, nucleus, and k, coda. Now, since smoke can easily be rhymed by cloak, we call the nucleus and the coda also the rhyme, because these together make up what is used in rhymes. Similarly, fog has a syllable structure with f in the onset and o in the nucleus and g in the coda, so og together make up the rhyme in this syllable. Now what happens in smog? If you look at the word that results from the blending process, you see that sm, the onset, is taken from smoke, and the rhyme og is taken from fog. So what happens in blending is that you access the syllable structure and you combine the two words into a close unit, so that smog takes up some of its pieces from the syllable structure of smoke from the first word and some of its syllable structure from the second word. The meaning of smog is obviously similar to smoke and fog, but I hope you will agree that when we blend words, what we create is like a very close combination of the two, a situation which is smoky and foggy at the same time. So it's got properties of both of the input words. From a constructional perspective, just like with the morphological word formation processes that we covered in the last session, you can see that we've got a link, a bidirectional link to the input words, and we got a blending construction which consists of parts of the first word, here the W from the first element, and the Z from the second element. Morphosyntactically, because we're looking at NN blends only at this point, it's a noun, the resulting word smog. And semantically, it's an entity, a thing, that has properties of both A and B, together combined. Now what the capital letters stand for, the W and the Z here, is parts of the syllable. Okay, so we take this as a shorthand notation for saying W is part of the syllable of my first input word, and Z must be a syllable element, either a rhyme, a nucleus, a coda, or the onset. Once we've got this, we can also explain how clippings work. So take a look at advertisement to add. As you can see in these situations, the part that is clipped off is clearly not a morpheme, so this wouldn't be covered by a morphological word formation process. Similarly, in public house, which is shortened to pub, and examination to exam, ination and lick house don't particularly mean anything, so they're not morphemes in classical approaches. Instead, again, we trim the words down to syllables. The meaning of the resulting words is roughly the same, except for stylistic differences, which we cover by saying that pragmatically these shortened words, add, pub, and exam, are normally used in more informal situations. Again, we can use our constructional network to indicate this. So we've got a word which has syllable elements W and X in capital letters, and the clipped construction only has the W, and that, because it must be a syllable, will include the onset and the nucleus. On top of that, one additional piece of information that the clipped construction has is that it is used in informal situations. It's a term for familiarity with a concept. What about backformations? Backformations, as an editor to edit, are situations where a word is shortened by deleting an alleged suffix. So editor entered the English language according to the OED in 1633. Edit only arrived in the English language in 1699. Normally you have things like write, writer, sing, singer, and speak, speaker, where the verb exists first and then you create the corresponding person doing this action by adding the But here this can't be the way that editor entered the English language, because edit didn't exist first. It was, again, the output that we had first. So in this situation, what is clipped off to create a verb is again not a morpheme because, well, the verb didn't exist in the first place. Editor is an example of that, but typewriter to typewrite and television to televise is the same thing. And here you can see that typewriter obviously is an object that was invented first before you could typewrite on it, or televisions were invented first before you could televise something. So here we've got a change of word class and a change of meaning, and some parts seem to be clipped off. Now again, this is a non-morphological word formation process in classical terminology, but as we will see from our schema-based constructionist approach, we can straightforwardly treat this as an Angucci type of process. So you got a schema for verbs, you have a corresponding action-noun construction, and normally you would have a verb like write, and that would then correspond to writer, so only a schwa at the end, and this then denotes a thing, an entity, someone who does the verbal action. In the case of editor, what happened was this word was borrowed during the 17th century, and then because of its similarity, because it was a person, someone who did something, and because it ended in it matched the schema of the verb to noun, action noun construction, and consequently we could go back from the output to the input, to use the metaphor once again, and create a verb edit. So this is another illustration of the Angucci type, which shows us that constructionist approaches using schemas can be used to explain things like backformation in exactly the same way as we would deal with derivation. So we've got one type of cognitive explanation for both of these things which in traditional theories are treated completely separately. Finally, constructionist approaches also help us to account for orthographic word formation processes. So sometimes you can shorten a word down to its initial letters and then the result is going to be pronounced like the letters of the ABC. So the Central Intelligence Agency becomes the CIA. This process is known as alphabetism. Again, the part that is clipped off is not a morpheme here. Similar to CIA, you've got the Oxford English Dictionary, which is also known as the OED, or the United States of America, which are often called the USA. The full word, as well as the shortened one, have roughly got the same meaning, except perhaps for slight differences in register and style. But we can account for this in a straightforward fashion with our constructional networks if we include a new level on the form part, i.e. orthography. Look to the left. There we've got a full element, and on the orthographic level we say it starts with a capital letter, denoted as C, then some lowercase letters, plus a capital letter D, some lowercase letters, another capital letter symbolized by E, followed by lowercase letters. On the right hand side, our alphabetism construction only has these initial letters, so whatever the initial letters are going to be, they're going to pop up on the orthographic level of our alphabetism construction. And then on the phonology, we got new elements C, D and E, which are symbols which denote the pronunciation of these initial letters according to the ABC. A similar shortening process happens in acronyms. There we shorten a word down to its initial letters, but the resulting element is then produced like a normal word. So radio detecting and ranging becomes RADR and is pronounced radar. Again, the part that's clipped off is not a morpheme, but the resulting element, radar in the first example, or laser as in light wave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, or finally OPEC for the oil producing and exporting countries, is again just taking the initial letters and then pronouncing them as a regular word. Again, the shortened acronyms as well as the input words seem to have a roughly similar meaning, except perhaps for style or register. Again, if we use our representation for orthography, we can see that we've got one type of word which is fleshed out in full, and on the orthography level to the left it's got C, D and E as the capital initial letters, followed by any amount of other letters, and in the acronym construction we simply strip off all of the non-initial letters. The only new element is the F function on the phonology level, which basically says pronounce the result as a word, and that seems to be a bit like hand waving and a bit of magic, but that's actually from formal approaches like heteronym phrase structure grammar, which use those kind of functions. And it simply says that whatever we have as the result of our acronym construction must be pronounced according to the rest of our constructicon, how similar words in form are pronounced. Finally, note that Ingo Clark has pointed out that with certain groups of speakers, the use of an abbreviation can be taken as a marker of social identity, so speakers and listeners but not outsiders know what the speaker is talking about. Something like LOL or LOL during the early days of the internet. So that might be something that we can add on the pragmatics level. But for now, just summing up constructionist approaches to word formation. Schema-based constructionist approaches can explain morphological as well as non-morphological word formation processes. I didn't have the time to get into this, but if you think about it, this would also work for eponyms, when a name like Sir James Watt comes to be used as a common noun, as in Watt, which is the derived unit of power, or neologisms, where new words are created based on similar sounding words or on the syllable structures of existing words in the constructicon, such as Codex, Smurf and Xerox. So again, throughout all of this, whether it's morphological or non-morphological approaches, we have highlighted the importance of the constructional network and of the constructicon as such. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to seeing you again next time.